Am I the a-hole for wanting to move out because my family thinks I'm lazy? Background: I'm a 28-year-old woman named Sarah. For the past few years, I have been living with my parents, Dave, father 60, and Linda, mother 58, and my younger brother, Jake, 22. After college, I moved back home to save money and started working a 9-to-5 job at a local marketing agency. My goal was to eventually move out and buy my own place, but life has taken some unexpected turns. Ever since I returned home, I felt I needed to contribute to the household. I pay my parents a small amount of rent, cover my own groceries, and help with household chores. However, my parents seem to think that my desire for downtime after work and on weekends makes me lazy. For context, my parents are both hard workers. My dad has been with the same company for over 30 years, and my mum works part-time as a nurse. They have always been very driven and have a strong work ethic. On the other hand, I prioritize self-care and mental health, which sometimes leads to them calling me lazy. The situation. A few months back, they arranged a family meeting. During this meeting, they expressed their concerns about my productivity. They mentioned that I spend too much time relaxing in front of the TV or scrolling through my phone and not enough time contributing to the household or saving for my future. "Sarah, I just don't understand how you can come home from work and just sit there," my dad said. "After a long day, I would do at least 1 or 2 chores to help out, or even take on extra projects at work. You're not a teenager anymore. You should be taking this seriously." My mum chimed in, "Why don't you try working out or volunteering? You could do so much more with your time." I wanted to explain that the demands of my job were exhausting and I needed time to recharge. I tried to express that I'm still working towards my goals, but they didn't seem to understand. They kept insisting that if I really wanted to move out, I should be doing more to prove that I can handle adult responsibilities. After that meeting, I felt pretty defeated. I realized how differently I viewed productivity and self-care compared to my parents. It became a recurring issue, with my parents continuously bringing it up whenever they felt I was being lazy. They would often compare me to Jake, who is still in college but manages a part-time job and a full course load, while volunteering for a local organization. One day, after a particularly heated argument about my laziness, I snapped. I said that maybe I would be better off moving out. My dad looked shocked and my mum seemed hurt. "If you think you can make it on your own, then maybe you should," she said. But I felt there was an underlying tone of disappointment and judgment in her voice. The decision. After our argument, I spent some serious time thinking about my options. I started researching apartments and looking into what it would take to live independently. I created a budget and realized that with careful planning, I could absolutely afford to live alone. A part of me felt liberated at the thought of my independence, but another part of me worried about how they would react. I decided to talk to my parents about my plans. I couldn't avoid the topic any longer. I sat them down and presented my case, explaining how I felt that living independently would allow me to grow and find my own identity outside of their expectations. "Mom, Dad, I think it's time for me to move out," I said cautiously. "I love you both, but I feel smothered here. I need the space to figure things out without feeling judged all the time." My dad didn't take it well at all. "And you think that living on your own is going to magically make you more responsible? You need to understand that adulthood comes with duties and hardships, not just freedom." My mum seemed sad, but tried to see my perspective. "Sarah, I just worry about you. The world can be tough and you're not as prepared as you think you are." In that moment, I felt misunderstood. I insisted that I was ready to take on more responsibility and do it my way. The fallout. After the conversation, everything changed. The chilly atmosphere in the house became palpable. My parents started treating me with distance, and Jake seemed confused, caught in the middle. Family dinners turned awkward, filled with side comments about my impending move and how they thought it was a rash decision. One night we were having dinner when my dad brought up another friend of his who recently kicked their son out for being lazy. "I just think, Sarah, that once you step out into the real world, it's going to hit you hard," he said, looking disappointed. Is that really what you think of me? I shot back. That I'm just going to fail and come crawling back? I'm not asking for your permission. I'm just letting you know what I'm doing. My mom sighed and rubbed her temples, looking more tired than ever. We're just worried, sweetie. There were no comforting words, only unyielding tension, and the pressure of my decision weighed down on me. The move out. After weeks of planning and getting everything in place, I finally found a small one-bedroom apartment in the nearby town. The day I moved out, my parents chose not to help. Jake came along and offered his support, despite the disapproval of our parents. As we unloaded boxes, I felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. This was the first step into adulthood I had always wished for, yet I couldn't shake off the feeling of shame my parents had instilled in me. Would they look at me differently now? Would they see me as responsible or lazy still? Once I settled in, I started to embrace the independence. I learned to cook simple meals, manage my budget, and take care of everything on my own. I felt incredibly proud of myself when I hosted my first small gathering with some friends and made dinner, but then I noticed a shift in how my parents treated me. They called less frequently, and when they did, the conversations were strained. They would ask how I was coping, but also gaslight me by mentioning how unprepared I seemed. "Your mother didn't want to voice it, but she worries about you," my dad would say. "We're happy you're trying, but we still think you need guidance." Their lack of faith hurt. I had felt forced into this position due to their constant criticism. I tried to explain how every choice I made was to better myself, but it seemed futile. My mum would smile tightly and nod, yet her eyes spoke disappointment. The Christmas dinner disaster. Several months passed, and as Christmas approached, I decided to invite my family over for dinner. I thought it would be the perfect opportunity to reunite and heal old wounds. I planned a feast, bought decorations, and made everything feel festive. As hard as it was, I was optimistic and looked forward to sharing my new life. Christmas Eve. Full of nerves and excitement, I prepared everything meticulously, eagerly awaiting their arrival. They walked in, each with forced smiles, and my heart sank when I noticed they seemed uncomfortable. Dinner started well. We chatted about trivial topics, but the underlying tensions loomed large. Halfway through the meal, Jake tried to make light conversation. "Sarah, your cooking is great. I can't believe you pulled this off on your own." But my dad interrupted. "It's nice, but let's be real. You haven't lived like an adult until you've faced real consequences." I felt my stomach churn. "What? Do you mean, Dad?" He made it clear he believed I was living in a bubble and would eventually have to face reality. "You think cooking a holiday meal is what being an adult is? Wait until you have bills to pay and responsibilities to manage." That was the last straw. I stood up from the table and confronted him. "You always want to undermine everything I do. Can't you see that I'm trying? I don't need your condescension or to live up to some arbitrary benchmarks you set." Silence followed, thick and suffocating. My mom's eyes widened with disbelief, and Jake looked like he wanted to disappear. "Sarah, we didn't mean to upset you," my mom said nervously, but I could tell her heart wasn't in it. "I can't do this right now," I muttered, feeling tears prickling my eyes. I stormed off into the other room, unable to hold it together. From the living room, I suddenly heard my dad say loudly, "You know, maybe she's being lazy after all," which sent my heart plummeting. The evening unraveled quickly after that. With my parents leaving in a huff and me left in tears, Jake tried to console me, but I felt defeated. The whole point of inviting them over was to bridge our divide, and instead it became a battlefield. Reflections. As New Year's approached, I began reflecting on everything that transpired. I knew I had chosen to move out to reclaim my autonomy, but at what cost? Would my relationship with my family ever be the same again? Encouraged by my close friends, I started seeing a therapist who specialized in family dynamics. Talking about my feelings and exploring the depth of my parents' expectations proved to be liberating. I learned skills for communication and began to understand the source of my parents' beliefs. Over time, I began to re-establish a low-frequency connection with my family, focusing on finding common ground rather than constantly challenging their views. Instead of arguing with them, I tried to communicate my feelings openly without hostility. The reunion. Months later, during a calm spring afternoon, I tentatively invited my parents to my place again. This time, I wasn't loaded with expectations. I simply wanted them to see my growth and celebrate small milestones together. To my surprise, they accepted, and as I prepped for their visit, I felt cheerful anticipation rather than anxiety. When they arrived, the atmosphere felt lighter and I could sense a shift. This time, dinner was filled with laughter, storytelling, and genuine interest in each other's lives. Often, my mom chimed in with encouragement about my cooking, and my dad even complimented my home decor. Before they left, my mom hugged me, looking me in the eyes. "We might not understand everything you do, but we want you to know we're always rooting for your happiness." I felt a glimmer of hope watching them walk away, knowing that despite past hurt, there's always room for healing. Life is a work in progress, and while our views might vary, mutual love and support created a bridge that could span the misunderstandings. Through my journey, I've grown stronger and prouder. I know the road isn't always easy, but I feel a sense of liberation for choosing the path that serves me best. And maybe, just maybe, I've learned that love exists even amidst differing beliefs. The real work comes in learning to embrace it fully. In the end, was I the a-hole for wanting to escape my family's expectations? I realized that taking charge of my life wasn't a reflection of laziness, but rather a bold move towards self-discovery. Am I the a-hole for refusing to attend my sister's wedding? It's funny how sometimes a single event can turn people's lives upside down. My story begins in a small town where I grew up with my two siblings, Lily, my older sister, and Tom, my younger brother. Our childhood was filled with laughter, sibling rivalry, and the typical chaos that comes with growing up in a tight-knit family. While we had our fair share of squabbles, we always came together for important events, that is, until recently. Lily, my sister, is 2 years older than me, and she has always been the golden child. She was the one who got straight A's, the one who excelled in everything she put her mind to, and the one who seemed to have it all figured out. I never felt any real rivalry with her until she got engaged. The proposal came on a perfect spring day. She posted a picture of her stunning ring on social media, captioning it with all the love and joy she felt. I was happy for her at first, but as the wedding plans unfolded, I began feeling increasingly detached from what was supposed to be an exciting chapter in her life. From the get-go, Lily had very specific ideas about her wedding. I understood that weddings tend to be deeply personal, but she started making decisions that seemed to go against our family's dynamics. During a family dinner, she announced that she was only inviting a select few people to her wedding, essentially narrowing it down to just her closest friends and immediate family. I figured, fine, that's her right, but then she made her first mistake. "Just so you all know," she said with a smile on her face, "I'm using a venue that holds a maximum of 50 guests, so if you don't get an invite, don't take it personally." My heart sank because that was the moment I realized I wouldn't be one of those lucky guests. I wasn't one of the closest friends, despite being her sister. When she sent out the invites, I looked at the list. I was not on it. "Lily," I addressed her in disbelief, "did you really just invite Sarah from high school but not your sister?" My frustration bubbled over. "It's just a small wedding," she said, brushing off my concerns. "I can't accommodate everyone. I thought you'd understand." Understand? How could I? I had celebrated every milestone in her life. I was there when she graduated college, when she got her first job, and every moment in between. Yet, here, I was cast aside, and her best friend and acquaintance from college was chosen over me. I felt utterly disrespected. Still, in an effort to keep the peace, I decided to suck it up and be supportive. I congratulated her through gritted teeth, putting on a brave face, even as anger simmered beneath the surface. But my feelings didn't stay hidden for long. Weeks later, as the wedding date drew closer, things only got worse. Lily shared with me that she would be eliminating any traditional elements from the ceremony. No, "Here comes the bride." No, "Bouquet toss." Nothing. While I admired her desire to break away from tradition, I found it baffling that she wouldn't even consider incorporating anything meaningful for our family. "Lily, "What about Mum's wedding dress?" I asked cautiously. "It'd be lovely for you to wear it." "Oh, please," she scoffed. "That's so cliché. I want something different. This is my wedding, not a family reunion." Her words stung, but what made it worse is that my parents, her biggest fans, were fully on board with her decisions. They seemed to adopt a blind loyalty that left me feeling left out and devalued. In their eyes, she could do no wrong. The final straw, however, was the day of the pre-wedding party. It was supposed to be a small gathering for the bridal party before the big day. They rented a gorgeous space full of lavish decorations. I watched as Lily's friends posted picture after picture online, eagerness to showcase a perfect party that I wasn't invited to. I stumbled upon a post of Lily with all her friends, posed to perfection, with comments pouring in about how gorgeous and special the moment was. It felt like a punch to the gut. The day of the wedding arrived, and I was a mix of angry, heartbroken, and torn. I knew I didn't want to attend, but a part of me felt like I should. Maybe deep down I still hoped that she would reconsider. I hesitated until that morning, when I finally made up my mind. I didn't want to go to a celebration where I wasn't valued or recognized. I sent her a message, letting her know that I wouldn't be attending. "You're really not coming?" she replied, visibly hurt, but I could sense the underlying disappointment. "This is a big day for me." "Yes, and I think it's a big day for you, not for our family. I personally don't want to put myself in a position where I feel unwanted. Hope you understand." The silence that followed spoke volumes. Over the next few days, I received a flood of messages from family members. Most were from my parents, expressing disappointment, but the most profound came from Tom. "You're really going to let a wedding come between you and Lily?" "You're her sister," he said. I was hurt by the judgment. This also wasn't just about a wedding, it was about respect and recognition within our family unit. Meanwhile, Lily continued to post about the wedding, showcasing every detail as if she was speaking to the world while I was a ghost, lingering in the shadows. When the wedding day arrived, I decided to spend the time at home binge-watching my favorite shows, but the guilt gnawed at me. It was unbearable. Over the following weeks, I started reflecting on everything that had transpired. I decided to reach out to her, letting her know how I felt. She responded, still frustrated that I didn't attend, and claiming that I was being childish and bitter. This led to a bigger falling out. "You'll regret this," she said coldly, and I couldn't shake the weight of her words. As time passed, my anger faded, replaced by a sense of finality. I knew I had made my choice, but that didn't prevent me from feeling like the world had turned against me. Weeks after the wedding, Tom confronted me again. He understood my perspective, but questioned whether I genuinely believed that staying away would lead to reconciliation. "Sometimes you have to put aside your feelings for the people you love," he urged. "You can't just cut ties over a wedding. Imagine how she feels." But he didn't seem to grasp that it wasn't just about the wedding. It was about all those moments leading up to it. I felt betrayed by someone who I thought would have my back, who I believed would prioritize our familial bond over everything else. Months went by without any communication. I sat silently as other family members continued to rally around Lily, commenting and liking her posts. Their loyalty felt like a dagger in my heart. Finally, after much reflection and regret during those long nights spent alone, I reached out for a truce. I wanted to reconnect. I poured my feelings into the message about how much I missed her, and that family meant everything to me. Her response, however, was perfunctory. "I'm busy now," she said curtly. Upon reading her words, I realized how deep the rift remained. Disheartened, I put my phone down, the sadness of trying to bridge that gap settling heavily on my chest. At this point, I found myself questioning everything. Was I really the one at fault here? Had I crossed a line by valuing my self-worth more than being part of that day? Should I have swallowed my feelings and just attended for the sake of family? I had long considered myself a loyal sister, always, putting family first. But family is not a one-way street. It is a dance, fluid, balanced, and reciprocal. Now, as I look back on those tumultuous months of reflection, the question remains, am I the a-hole for refusing to attend my sister's wedding? Am I the a-hole for choosing my career over family? When I, 29F, graduated college, I was brimming with ambition and dreams. Ever since I was a child, I wanted to be a wildlife biologist. The thought of exploring the vast wilderness, studying creatures big and small, and contributing to the protection of our planet filled my heart with excitement. I spent years studying, interning, and finally landing a position as a wildlife officer. My journey was challenging, with long hours, unpredictable environments, and many sacrifices along the way, but I was determined. Fast forward a few years, and I was thriving in my career. My projects included researching endangered species and working on their conservation. However, my job also demanded a significant amount of time away from home, which was particularly difficult, as my family began to expect that I would always be available for every gathering, event, or emergency. One day, I got a call from my brother, Mark, 31M. He was in distress. Their family dog, Mia, had been diagnosed with terminal cancer, and it was devastating for him and his wife, Sarah. They wanted me to come home for support. I immediately took a few days off and returned to support them, but the emotional strain was palpable. I could see the pain in their eyes, and though I comforted them, the experience left me drained. I knew I had to focus on my job shortly after, as I had a big project deadline approaching. A week later, I received heartbreaking news. They had to put Mia down. Mark called me sobbing, and I felt an urge to rush to their side. However, I was just a few days into a critical field study that required my involvement. I hesitated, but ultimately decided to stick to my commitments and be present during the next phase of my study. This choice caused a rift between Mark and me. He felt I had chosen my career over family and accused me of being selfish. I understood that he was hurting, but I felt I had made a responsible decision, balancing my duties. When I explained my perspective, he let loose his disappointment. "Does your job really mean more to you than your family? You can't do this forever," he yelled. Despite my efforts to console him, the conflict worsened. Our parents were brought into it, adding to the division. They thought I should have prioritized family over a job that apparently didn't value me as they believed I should be. This led to several uncomfortable family dinners, where the atmosphere was thick with tension. Months went by, and while I received promotions at work, I also became more distant from my family. Holidays felt forced, and despite wanting to be involved, I often faced passive-aggressive comments about my career choices. Mark and Sarah had a baby, and I was excited to be an aunt, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being unwelcome. When I visited, it was obvious they still held my decisions against me. I supported them when I could, but it was hard to shake the feeling that they thought I was a failure as a sister. After one particularly awkward family Christmas where Sarah made a comment about me being absent from real life, I decided to confront them. I arranged a video call with my parents and Mark. I told them how much I loved them, and that my job was not just a career for me but also my passion. I reminded them that I was doing everything I could to protect the wildlife. I loved and educate others about our planet's fragility. To me, that also meant supporting my family in a way that would help them recognize the importance of conservation. But during our discussion, Mark blew up again, clearly unyielding in his viewpoint. "You think you're some hotshot saving the planet, but at what cost? You've sacrificed all your family relationships. You can't be there for us when we need you, and yet you want to lecture us on love and connection." I felt cornered. He insisted I had changed, that I no longer cared about family, and the words hurt more than I could express. I argued back, defending my choices and expressing how difficult the past year had been for me. "I'm trying to build a career to make a difference. That matters," I reasoned, but it only escalated the argument. Finally, after a harsh exchange, I hung up feeling defeated and heartbroken, unsure of what to do next. As weeks passed, easing the tension seemed elusive. My parents, though supportive à la carte of my career, inadvertently sided with Mark regarding the importance of family. Conversations had become fraught with tension. I often found myself second-guessing my choices. Later that year, I received a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to lead a significant research project abroad. This project would involve me moving countries for a year an exciting but undoubtedly daunting chapter that I had dreamed of. Gleeful, I shared the news with my family over the phone, expecting them to be enthusiastic, but instead it felt like I had dropped a bomb. Mark's response was swift. "You're really going to just leave us behind? You don't care about what we're dealing with here?" My parents echoed his sentiments, expressing disappointment. "You're abandoning your family," my mother said softly, almost pleadingly. The weight of their reactions crushed me. I had aged and matured through my career, yet this felt like being put right back in the arguments of my teenage years, where I was told that my ambitions made me unfit to be part of the family. I found myself at a crossroads. Do I take this opportunity that symbolizes my lifelong dream? Or do I backtrack, returning to a life centered around family that doesn't leave room for my passions? Conflicted, I reflected on my motives and my worth. Was I selfish for prioritizing my job? Did I owe my family everything, even my happiness and dreams? I ultimately took the opportunity, believing it was what I had worked toward my entire life. Since then, I have felt a mix of excitement about living and working overseas and unease about my family's opinions. I've stayed in touch through calls and messages, but can feel the strain consistently. Recently, they missed my birthday for the second time, citing their busy lifestyles and my absence as the excuse. I've come to wonder if I've driven a wedge too deep between us. Each time I think about talking to them again or returning home, I fear their judgment and disapproval. This has left me feeling isolated in a role I used to associate with purpose. At this point, I want to know, am I the a-hole for prioritizing my career and passion over family expectations? I find myself at the edge of an emotional abyss, desperate for validation and clarity. I'm starting to question whether the dreams I chased have driven me to a place devoid of the support network I once valued. Am I selfish for wanting to pursue my path? Am I the a-hole for choosing my child's extracurricular activities over my partner's wishes? Background: I'm a 34-year-old single mother named Sarah, and I have an 8-year-old son, Jake. Since having him, my life has revolved around making sure I provide him with the best opportunities possible. I want him to grow into a well-rounded individual, which means encouraging him to explore various interests and hobbies. This has been a journey of learning for both of us, and we've enjoyed many moments together. While I've always tried to provide a warm environment, I recently started dating a great guy named Mark, who is 36. He has no kids, but he's been wonderful with Jake. They have a good relationship, and Mark often shows interest in being active in Jake's life. However, things started to get complicated when it came to Jake's extracurricular activities. The dilemma begins. As the school year approached, I sat down with Jake to discuss what activities he might want to try. He showed interest in a variety of things, from soccer to learning guitar. I was delighted. I wanted him to have a chance to explore his interests. After a couple of weeks of research and attending a few trial classes, Jake decided he wanted to focus on soccer and join a local youth team. I was happy with this decision. Jake had always shown a love for running around and kicking a ball with friends, and I thought soccer would be a good outlet for his energy. However, when I shared our plan with Mark, I noticed a shift in his demeanor. He seemed hesitant and brought up a different perspective. Mark wanted Jake to take up martial arts instead. He's an avid martial artist himself, and explained how it could help improve Jake's discipline, confidence, and focus. While I appreciated his input, I didn't want to impose an activity that Jake hadn't shown interest in. To me, it was crucial to support Jake's choice and encourage him to pursue something that excited him. The tension grows as Jake's soccer team began practicing. Mark grew increasingly frustrated. He made comments about how soccer was just a mindless game, and that martial arts would teach Jake valuable life skills. I tried to communicate how important it was for Jake to pursue what he loved, but Mark didn't seem to understand my viewpoint. He suggested I should have a serious discussion with Jake about the benefits of martial arts, and that perhaps I was lacking as a parent by letting Jake make his own choices. This approach infuriated me. I had always been firm about allowing Jake to have a say in his interests, given that I want him to be an independent thinker. I felt like Mark was undermining my parenting. I decided then and there that I would continue to support Jake in his soccer journey, even if it meant creating some distance with Mark. As the weeks went by, the tension escalated. Mark would sometimes arrive at practices and make dismissive comments about soccer. He even started showing up at training sessions to try to convince Jake to switch to karate by badgering him during breaks. It was uncomfortable and disheartening to see Jake caught in the middle of our disagreements. The breaking point one evening, after a particularly tense week, Mark and I sat down for dinner. I thought some quality time together might ease the situation. While we were eating, Mark casually mentioned that he had registered Jake for a free trial karate class for the following Saturday. My heart sank. This felt like a direct attack against my parenting choices. I confronted Mark immediately, asking if he truly thought overriding my decision was an appropriate way to handle the situation. He defended his actions by stating that I was holding Jake back from something that could enhance his life. In that moment, I felt cornered and angry. We ended up having a heated argument, with Mark insisting that I was being unreasonable and stubborn, while I accused him of undermining my role as a mother. Eventually, I realized that this wasn't just about extracurricular activities anymore. It was about our differing visions for Jake's upbringing. The argument culminated in me declaring that I would not allow him to dictate my son's interests, and if he couldn't respect that, maybe he needed to reconsider his involvement in our lives altogether. Once the dust settled, I felt conflicted. Mark had become a significant part of our lives, but I had no intention of compromising my parenting. I questioned whether I was being unreasonable or if Mark was indeed overstepping bounds. The fallout after that confrontation, Mark distanced himself. He stopped visiting as frequently, claiming he needed time to think about things. Jake picked up on the tension and began asking about why Mark wasn't around anymore. I felt terrible for putting my son in that position, but I felt justified in defending our choices. Not wanting to strain our relationship further, I reached out to Mark a couple of weeks later, hoping to come to a resolution. During that conversation, it became clear that Mark felt rejected by my stubbornness. He spoke about wanting to be a father figure for Jake and how he believed he could offer valuable lessons through martial arts. I told him he could teach Jake about martial arts if that's what he wanted, but he had to understand it was Jake's choice to explore soccer first. This led to another argument, and I finally stated that if he couldn't support Jake in what he wanted, then I couldn't continue the relationship. Mark ended up breaking things off. He said he needed someone who would be open to meeting in the middle. As painful as it was, I knew I had to prioritize my child's wishes over my own desire for a relationship. Reflections, in the weeks that followed, I questioned my decision. Am I the a-hole for standing my ground about Jake's activities? Should I have allowed Mark a little more room in making suggestions, given that he cares about Jake? On the other hand, I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't right for Mark to impose his preferences on Jake, which led to significant relationship challenges. I talked to friends and family about the situation. Most supported my decision to prioritize Jake's interests, but acknowledged that communication and compromise are essential in any relationship. Some wondered if I had been too harsh, while others lauded me for being a protective mother. In the end, I learned that parenting choices can often be contentious, especially when blended families and new relationships become involved. I decided to stay steadfast in supporting Jake and ensuring he has the freedom to choose his path no matter where it leads. Conclusion: as time moves on, I eventually found peace with my decision. I focused on nurturing Jake's love for soccer, going to every practice, cheering him on during games, and even signing him up for soccer camp during the summer. We built amazing memories together, and I felt proud knowing I had offered him a platform to explore his interests. However, I still wonder, am I the a-hole for standing my ground against Mark's wishes about Jake's extracurricular activities? Should I have been more flexible in considering Mark's suggestions? I'd love to hear others' thoughts on this complicated family dynamic. Am I the a-hole for cutting off my parents after they disowned my partner? I'll start off by saying that I never imagined I'd find myself writing this. My name is Sarah, and I'm a 27-year-old woman who's in love with a wonderful person named Alex, who identifies as non-binary. We've been together for 4 years and they've brought immense joy into my life. However, that joy has recently been overshadowed by a significant conflict with my family. My parents, who are in their late 50s, have traditionally held very conservative views. Growing up, they instilled in me a strong set of values about the importance of family tradition and following societal norms. I understood from an early age who they expected me to be with, and Alex did not fit that mold. The first meeting, we met back in college during a group project for a sociology class. Alex stood out to me immediately with their bright smile and wit. While we didn't hit it off romantically at first, we slowly became good friends. Eventually, our relationship blossomed into something deeper. While I struggled with my parents' conservative views on relationships, especially my father's glowing praise of traditional families, I couldn't help but fall deeper in love with Alex. When it came time to introduce Alex to my parents, I felt apprehensive, but hopeful. I decided to bring them home for a family dinner, thinking that they may be more open-minded than I anticipated. Unfortunately, I was wrong. As soon as Alex walked through the door, I could feel the tension in the room. My parents greeted them, politely but with clear signs of discomfort. My father's smile was stiff, and my mother's eyes darted around as if looking for an escape. Throughout the night, they made offhand comments that felt mean-spirited and condescending, even if they masked them as concerns. When Alex and I left that night, I was on the verge of tears. I had hoped for acceptance, but was instead met with a wall of judgment. I knew I needed to have an honest conversation with my parents. The confrontation days after the dinner, I called my parents to discuss how I felt. I told them that Alex was an incredible person who loved me deeply and that their non-binary identity was an integral part of who they are. I expected pushback, but I hoped that they would at least hear me out. Instead, things escalated quickly. My father interrupted me, stating that it was unnatural and confused for someone not to identify strictly as a man or woman. My mom chimed in, saying that I was making a huge mistake aligning myself with someone they couldn't accept. Despite trying to reason with them, they doubled down on their views. Eventually, my father said something that shocked me to my core. "If you choose to be with this person, you are no daughter of mine." At that moment, my heart sank. I had two choices. I could either continue trying to get my parents to understand, or I could accept their ultimatum. I chose the latter out of sheer defiance, feeling that I had no other option. Just like that, I cut them out of my life. The fallout afterward, I felt an overwhelming sense of freedom mixed with sadness. I poured my energy into my relationship with Alex, and we began to build a life together. As the months passed, though, guilt crept in. I missed my parents, and sometimes I wondered if I had given up too easily. The holidays rolled around, and while Alex and I were planning to celebrate quietly together, my parents reached out. My mother sent a text saying how much they missed me and how they just wanted to talk things over. Reading those words stirred up a mix of hope and anxiety in me. After a few long discussions with Alex, we decided that it might be worth a shot to talk. Perhaps they had come to terms with my relationship and would be more understanding this time. I remember the day of the call vividly. I sat down on the couch, heart pounding, as I dialed their number. My mother answered, her voice shaky yet warm. My father joined shortly after, and I quickly realized that this wouldn't be easy. They opened the conversation with apologies, but they also reinstated some of their beliefs regarding traditional family structures. They told me they had been doing research and were trying hard to understand. Their efforts felt contrived, and I couldn't help but feel frustrated. While I appreciated the attempt, it didn't change the way I viewed their earlier reaction. Before I could regain my composure, my father raised the issue of grandchildren. "You do realize how important it is for families to continue on, don't you?" he said, utterly oblivious. At that moment, the tension became unbearable. I calmly explained that Alex and I were not at that stage, and that would never be a bargaining point in my life. The call ended abruptly, with both my parents leaving without saying an actual goodbye. The emotional toll over. The next few months, the emotional toll of my decision bore down heavily on me. I'd hear friends talking about their family gatherings and holiday traditions, feeling a pang of loneliness. I tried to offer myself solace in the love that Alex showed me daily, but it was hard not to feel like a part of me was missing. Alex was always supportive, encouraging me to reach out if I felt the need, but I was scared. Scared of what would happen if I re-engaged with my parents, scared that my choice would always loom over me like a dark cloud. Then came another surprise. My sister Amy, who was 23, decided to reach out. Unlike my parents, Amy had always been more accepting of different lifestyles. We had a great relationship, in the past laughing about anything and everything together. When she called, I was relieved yet wary. "Hey Sarah, I just wanted to check in on you," she said, her voice gentle. It was a conversation I had yearned for, and I opened up about everything. I told her how my parents were, and how the weight of it all just felt so heavy. Amy took a deep breath. I don't agree with them. You know that. I can't imagine how hard this has been. I could hear the empathy in her voice. But there's something that bothers me, and I hope you don't take it the wrong way. Go ahead, I replied, intrigued yet concerned. Are you sure you couldn't find a way to talk to them? Maybe they just need time. You know how Dad can be. Her words hit me hard. The thought of reaching out again was terrifying, but there was a small part of me that wanted to believe that maybe my parents could eventually come around. I don't know, Amy. It's hard to forget what they said, I admitted. It's like they never even saw me anymore. I get that, she replied softly, but you shouldn't feel like you're in the wrong for loving who you love. Even if they can't accept that, you're still you. Her words hung in the air, resonating deeply with me. The dilemma. Few weeks later, Amy managed to host a small family gathering, hoping to bridge the gap. It was under the guise of a casual get-together, but I knew that there were plans for confrontation and discussion, an unmistakable peace effort. As I prepared for the event, Alex stood by my side. "Are you sure you want to do this? You don't owe them anything, you know," they said. "I'm scared," I confessed, "but maybe this could help ease the strain." The day arrived, and as I walked into my sister's house, memories washed over me, nostalgia mixed with anxiety. The atmosphere felt rife with apprehension. My parents were already there, sitting rigidly, on the sofa, back straight. The tension was palpable. As the small talk began, my father discussed the latest sports scores like nothing had happened. I wanted nothing more than to scream at him to acknowledge the elephant in the room. Instead, I bit my lip and played along, glancing at Alex, who offered a reassuring squeeze of my hand. After a brief interlude, Amy finally broke the ice. "So, how is everyone doing?" she asked, eyeing me discreetly. My mother caught my gaze, and for a brief second I thought I saw sorrow in her eyes. "We've been camping a lot. You should come with us next time," she said, the veneer feeling painfully fake. I knew it was now or never. "Mom, Dad, can we talk about Alex?" A silence descended. My father shifted uncomfortably, and my mother glanced away. "Sarah, I don't think that's necessary." "Why?" I almost shouted. "Why can't we acknowledge that I'm in love with someone you don't accept?" "Because it's just not right," my father muttered, the same words echoing our previous conversations. "Maybe if you'd take the time to truly understand and listen, you could see how wrong that is," I countered. "I love Alex, and that should be enough for you to at least try," my mother cut in. "But this isn't just about you. It's about the family we envisioned." "In your vision?" I shot back. "Not mine. If I don't fit into your ideal mold, does that mean I shouldn't exist?" As the confrontation reached a boiling point, I felt a mixture of anger and despair. Eventually, it became clear that my parents hadn't changed their views even slightly. The decision as we exited the gathering, it felt painfully evident where we stood. I turned to Alex, who gently stroked my hand. "You did the right thing by being honest," they said. "No matter what they think, your love is valid." That night, I wrestled with the realization that my decision to cut them off had been the right one. It was still painful, but I knew I had to stand firm in my truth. I consulted with Alex, and we came to a shared decision that we would focus on our own future, which meant accepting the reality that my parents might never accept Alex. The conclusion time passed, and I concentrated on building the life I wanted with Alex. I found solace in the community we built together, with friends who were supportive and loving. Little by little, the pain of losing my family faded into the background, even as I occasionally recalled memories of happier times. Eventually, I emerged with a deeper understanding of myself. I learned to appreciate the importance of surrounding myself with people who accepted me unconditionally. I still carried the scars of that difficult choice, but I also knew I wouldn't trade Alex for anything. Months later, as I sit by the fireplace with Alex on a cozy winter evening, I reflect on the journey I've traveled. The path was tumultuous, but I also learned an invaluable lesson about love, identity, and self-acceptance. As for my parents, I've chosen peace over resentment. More than anything, this entire experience has fortified my belief that love should never be conditional. Even if that love comes with significant heartache, I would choose it over living a lie any day. So, am I the a-hole for cutting off my parents when they disowned my partner? I still find myself asking that question, and while I understand their perspective, I know in my heart that I made the right choice for my life. Am I the a-hole for not inviting my brother's fiancée to our family gathering? Growing up, my brother Alex and I shared a tight bond. We confided in each other, supported each other through thick and thin, and often had each other's backs in any circumstance. As we grew older, life took us on different paths, but we always made time to reconnect, especially during family gatherings. For the past few years, our family has made a tradition of hosting holiday gatherings at my parents' house. It's a chance for everyone to catch up, enjoy each other's company, eat delicious food, and reminisce about old times. I love this tradition, and I always look forward to it, but sometimes it brings its own set of challenges. Alex recently got engaged to a woman named Jessica. From the very first time our family met her, I could tell my parents were in love with her. She's charming, friendly, and gets along with everyone, or so it seemed. However, as I got to know her a bit better, I began to feel differently. Jessica had an attitude that rubbed me the wrong way. While she was charming in social situations, her comments were often condescending, especially about my decisions in life. It started on a family trip where we were discussing personal career choices, and she casually mocked my decision to take a less conventional job. I shrugged it off initially, focusing on my brother's happiness. The wedding plans began, and with them came the idea of having family gatherings designed to include Jessica and her family, which was different for us. While my parents were excited about this integration, I felt increasingly uncomfortable. What solidified my discomfort was when Jessica started making certain decisions that directly impacted our family. She insisted on planning family events, including the upcoming holiday gathering. When it was announced that she wanted to host the Thanksgiving gathering this year, I didn't react outwardly, but inside I was fuming. I couldn't help but feel that it was a permanent shift in our family dynamic. Alex's decision to prioritize her preferences over our family traditions made me question their relationship even further, and I wasn't the only one. My parents appeared conflicted as well, caught between their love for Alex and their worry about how this new addition would change our family gatherings. As the date approached, Jessica started sending out messages about the Thanksgiving dinner, what to bring, who was attending, and so on. Each message seemed more controlling than the last. On top of that, she'd make jabs about my cooking, suggesting that I should leave the food to those with better skills. This marked the moment when I decided I would finally take a stand. This was my family, and I didn't want to feel belittled or overshadowed during our gatherings. So, I made a choice. I informed my parents that I wouldn't be attending the Thanksgiving gathering at Jessica's place, and instead planned to host my own small family dinner. I thought it would be nice for everyone to join me in a familiar space, free of Jessica's comments and control. I extended personal invitations to everyone, including Alex, though I made it clear that I wouldn't involve Jessica. The day of the dinner arrived, and it felt great to be around my family in a comfortable atmosphere. It was filled with laughter, homemade dishes, and a deep sense of nostalgia. When Alex walked in, his expression was somewhat baffled. He glanced around, seemingly at a loss for words. I greeted him warmly, eager to introduce the familiar environment. However, it wasn't. Long before he confronted me in front of everyone, "Why didn't you invite Jessica?" he asked, his tone laced with frustration. The room grew quiet and all eyes were on us. I took a deep breath, knowing that I needed to address my feelings candidly, yet respectfully. "Look, Alex," I began, "I really appreciate your fiancée, for how much she means to you, but I simply feel uncomfortable around her. I think everyone deserves to enjoy family time without feeling unheard or belittled. Thanksgiving is about gratitude and family, and I felt that was being overshadowed by her involvement." He looked visibly distressed, and for a moment I thought I might have pushed too far. After a brief silence, he replied, "I understand where you're coming from, but she's part of my life now. Can't you at least try to get along with her?" I admitted that I hadn't given her a fair chance, but explained that my experience hasn't been wonderful. Alex's frustration was palpable, and as we talked, I sensed the divide widening. Eventually, he stormed out, angry and hurt. The atmosphere in the room was tense, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I had just pushed my brother away. Days went by, and I received messages from family members voicing their concerns about how the situation unfolded. They were sympathetic to Alex, believing he deserved to have his fiancée included in family matters, even when it came to traditions. In their eyes, I was the one complicating an otherwise happy occasion. I tried reaching out to Alex afterward, but he didn't respond to my texts. It hurt to think that this one incident could endanger our relationship after we had been inseparable throughout life. My parents placed a call to me, expressing their disappointment in how I handled things. They indicated they felt I could have managed the situation better, whatever that meant. Months passed, and as the holidays returned, the rift only seemed to deepen. I was still hurt by the way things turned out. In private conversations, Alex would share his struggles incorporating Jessica into family dynamics, leading to even more turmoil, and during these discussions, he would repeatedly comment on how I'd opened the door for the strains in their relationship. Reflecting on everything, I couldn't help but wonder, had I made the right choice? Should I have just swallowed my pride, accepted Jessica into our lives, and tried harder to build a relationship with her, even if it made me uncomfortable? Or was it wrong of me to put my family traditions first, trying to shield our bond from her influence? So here I am, turning to you all. Am I the a-hole for not inviting my brother's fiancée to our family gathering? Am I the a-hole? Background: my name is Emily, and I'm a 28-year-old graphic designer living in a small city. My best friend Sarah and I have known each other since elementary school. We've been inseparable through thick and thin. Over the years, we've celebrated each other's accomplishments, supported each other through tough times, and created countless memories. Sarah has always been like a sister to me, and I genuinely consider her family. The situation. It all started a few months ago when Sarah got engaged to her longtime boyfriend Mark. I couldn't have been happier for her. Mark is a great guy, loving and supportive, and they make a perfect couple. As soon as Sarah announced her engagement, I knew I wanted to be there for her throughout the wedding planning process. But I also had my fair share of life alterations to navigate. Around the same time, I was offered a promotion at work that came with a significant raise and more responsibilities. It was an incredible opportunity for me, but it also meant I would be working longer hours and would have less time to help Sarah with wedding planning. We talked through this, and Sarah insisted that I take the opportunity. "You deserve this." She told me. I appreciated her understanding. I didn't want her to feel abandoned. Despite my work commitments, I made it a point to involve myself as much as I could. I attended all the wedding planning meetings, helped choose aspects of the decor, and went with her to the venue to set things up. I cherished those moments with her, and I felt like I was actively participating in her big day. The conflict. As the wedding day approached, tensions began to rise. Sarah and Mark were planning a destination wedding in a beautiful coastal town. However, this meant that traveling would be an additional financial burden for many guests, including myself. I knew Sarah had been stressing about guest lists and finances, and I tried to reassure her that everything would work itself out in the end. Eventually, Sarah sent out save the dates for the wedding and received some mixed feedback from friends and family. A handful of people were upset that it would cost them a great deal of money to attend, while others were simply excited about the trip. When invitations went out, I saw that many friends and family members started declining, voicing financial concerns or scheduling conflicts. One evening, Sarah invited me over for dinner to vent about planning. She expressed her disappointment about guest turnout, and I tried to empathize with her. After talking it out, I finally revealed that I might not be able to attend either. The truth was, my job was demanding more from me than I expected, and, with recent expenses, I was struggling to make ends meet as well. I explained to Sarah that I would try my best, but it was likely that I might have to miss her wedding. Her face turned pale, and she immediately snapped back, "You can't be serious, Em, you're my best friend." I felt hurt at her reaction and tried to explain my situation, but the conversation spiraled into an argument. "It's not about the money. It's about being there for me," she shouted. I told her I completely understood her perspective, but I had to prioritize my career and finances. It was a difficult conversation, and by the end I left her house teary-eyed and feeling guilty. The fallout. After that night, Sarah started to withdraw from me. She stopped calling and texting as frequently, and I could feel the rift growing. As someone who has always been there for her, each day of silence felt heavier than the last. I reached out multiple times to address the issue, but she would just respond curtly, "I'd rather not talk about it." Days turned into weeks, and she continued to distance herself. When wedding-related conversations came up in group settings, Sarah would completely ignore my presence or make snarky comments that I could feel were directed at me. It felt like being punished for being a responsible adult. Then, a week before the wedding, she sent out a group text to her bridal party for rehearsal dinner plans. I was hesitant to respond because I wasn't sure what my status would be. This time I decided to be honest. "Hey everyone, I'm doing my best to make it, but I've really been swamped at work. I'll keep you posted." To my surprise, Sarah responded angrily, "Your best isn't good enough for this wedding. I don't want you there if you're not fully committed." I was taken aback by her comment. At that moment, I realized how far we had drifted, and I felt humiliated for trying. To be honest, I decided to invite her over for a heart-to-heart that weekend. When she arrived, she looked visibly upset. "Emily, I can't believe you'd even think about not attending," she said. "It's not just a party, it's my wedding day." "I know how important it is to you," I replied. "It's just such a big financial strain for me right now." She crossed her arms, leaned against the wall, and said something that stung. "I thought you cared more about our friendship than your job. Clearly, I was wrong." At this point, I felt the tear between us growing. Instead of gaining clarity, I became defensive. "I care about you, Sarah, but I can't jeopardize my career and financial stability for a wedding." We both yelled in frustration until our voices cracked, and finally, I suggested we take a break from each other. "Maybe you need some time to think about what's more important to you, a wedding day or a friend," I said as she stormed out of my apartment. The next day, it hit me that I had been harsh. Those words stung, and I regretted saying them. I felt like I wasn't being a supportive friend when she needed me most. Trying to make amends, I sent her a text that said I was sorry, but that I needed her to understand where I was coming from, too. Unfortunately, the distance only grew. I found it hard to focus at work, and the guilt nagged at me every moment. Eventually, I decided I wouldn't make a last-minute decision to go to the wedding without her inviting me back. The wedding day. On the day of the wedding, I was a ball of nerves. I spent the whole morning feeling upset about how everything turned out. I scrolled through social media to see her wedding photos, and I couldn't help but feel like I was missing a piece of my life. Hours later, I received a message from another mutual friend, Rachel. She told me how beautiful everything looked, and that Sarah had cried during the ceremony. I felt a pit in my stomach knowing I wasn't part of that moment. However, a couple of days after the wedding, I received a text from Sarah. It simply read, "I need to talk." My heart raced at the thought of confronting her again. When we met up, Sarah looked more vulnerable than I had ever seen her. There were rings around her eyes, and I could tell she'd been crying. I was a complete mess. On my wedding day, she admitted, I didn't really want to accept that some friends wouldn't be there, especially my best friend. I get it, I said softly, but I needed you to understand why I couldn't be there. We started talking about everything, each of us expressing our feelings through the hurt. I apologized for my harsh words, and Sarah opened up about her disappointment in losing the connection we once had. By the end of the discussion, we started to bridge the gap that had formed between us. Let's promise to communicate better next time, I said. I never want to go through this again. She nodded in agreement, and we hugged each other tightly. You're not a bad friend, Em, she whispered, and I'm sorry for expecting too much. Conclusion. As weeks turned into months, Sarah and I have worked to rebuild our friendship. However, I still reflect on that moment. The harsh words, the misunderstandings. It taught me a lot about communication and empathy, especially when life pulls us in different directions. So, am I the a-hole for prioritizing my work and financial stability over my best friend's wedding, considering everything we went through? Or was Sarah expecting too much from me, not recognizing that I wasn't able to stretch myself any thinner? I guess in the end, we're both a little at fault, but through it all, I've learned that being open and honest in a friendship is key. Even when it's hard, it's a lesson I won't soon forget.